The sacrifice felt unbearable, but the thought of living under the drum's control for the rest of his life was even worse. He didn't want to be a prisoner to their power, to the dark forces that seemed to lurk behind them. Mazi and his best friend Juma discover ancient, forbidden drums hidden deep within the forest. Despite the village's warnings, Mazi can't resist playing them, unleashing a powerful force they don't understand. Strange and unsettling events begin to unfold, drawing them to the oracle, who reveals a shocking truth. Mazi is now bound to the ancient magic of the drums. Haunted by the oracle's words, Mazi struggles with the weight of his new power. The drums are more than just instruments. They carry a dangerous, ancient magic that now pulses inside him. As he wrestles with his fears, the oracle reveals a chilling prophecy. To break free from the drum's power, Mazi must make an unimaginable sacrifice. With everything at stake, Mazi must decide whether to embrace his destiny or fight to regain control of his life. Knowing the cost of freedom will change him forever. The forest seemed to hold its breath as Mazi and Juma made their way back from the oracle's cave. The sky had darkened, and the shadows under the trees stretched out like long fingers, yet Mazi barely noticed. The weight of the oracle's prophecy pressed heavily on his mind, pulling him into a deep silence. He had never felt so far away from his village, from his friends, from himself. The power of the drums. What did it mean to be bound to them? Juma glanced at him nervously, his footsteps crunching on the path. "Mazi," he finally whispered, breaking the tense quiet. "What do you think the oracle meant? About you being bound to the drums?" Mazi shook his head slowly. "I don't know," he admitted. His voice sounded distant, even to himself. "But it feels like the drums are inside me now. I can feel them." The memory of the drum's beat, the surge of power that had flowed through him in the cave, made Mazi's chest tighten. He could still feel the energy humming beneath his skin, a rhythm that had become part of him. But was it a gift or a curse? The oracle had spoken of power, but at what cost? Jumi's brow furrowed. "We shouldn't have played those drums, Mazi. I have a bad feeling about this." Mazi said nothing. He had questions, so many questions, but no answers. All he knew was that something had changed. The drums had chosen him, but for what purpose? And what would that mean for his future? As they walked in silence, Mazi couldn't help but wonder if he had any control left over his own fate, or if the drums had already decided it for him. The village was quiet as Mazi and Juma returned, the usual hum of activity replaced by an eerie stillness. Mazi felt the eyes of the villagers on him as he walked through the dirt paths, but he avoided meeting their gaze. It was as if they could sense that something was different about him, something strange. Even at home, surrounded by the warmth of his family, Mazi couldn't shake the feeling that he no longer belonged. His mother's voice drifted through the small hut, calling him for dinner, but the food tasted like ash in his mouth. The questions still gnawed at him, refusing to leave him in peace. After dinner, Mazi slipped away, finding solace under the large baobab tree at the edge of the village. The night was calm, the stars twinkling above him, but inside, a storm was brewing. He pressed his hands against the earth, trying to ground himself, but the drum's rhythm still pulsed within him, a quiet hum that refused to be silenced. "What does it mean to be bound to the drums?" Mazi whispered to himself, his voice barely audible in the stillness. He thought of the oracle's cryptic words, the heavy burden she had placed on his shoulders. Was this power a blessing, meant to guide him toward a higher purpose? Or was it a curse, one that would consume him, robbing him of any hope of a normal life? The questions whirled in his mind. If he was meant to carry this power, could he bear it? What if he failed? What if the dark forces that seemed tied to the drums were already playing a cruel game with him, bending his will to theirs? Could he resist, or would he be swept away in their power? Mazi's fists clenched, his heart heavy with uncertainty. He was only 12. How could he bear such responsibility? As the days passed, the weight of the oracle's words became almost unbearable. Mazi could barely sleep, his dreams haunted by the beat of the drums, the hum of power that now lived inside him. He felt like he was losing himself, becoming something he didn't recognize. Juma noticed the change in him, and one afternoon, he confronted Mazi as they walked near the river. "You're different now," Juma said, his voice filled with concern. "It's like you're not really here anymore." Mazi stopped, staring at the rushing water. "I don't know who I am anymore," he admitted, his voice raw with frustration. "The drums, they're always with me now, like a shadow I can't escape. And the oracle, she said I'm bound to them. But what does that even mean? Am I cursed? Is this my fate?" Juma was silent for a moment, then placed a hand on Mazi's shoulder. "You're still you, Mazi," he said quietly. "You haven't changed. Not really. But maybe you need to figure out what this power means before you can understand what to do with it." Mazi nodded, but his heart was heavy. He knew Juma was right, but that didn't make the burden any easier to carry. The drums had chosen him for something, and he needed to find out what. But the oracle's prophecy still lingered in his mind. There was a sacrifice to be made, and Mazi was terrified of what it might be. As the days turned into weeks, Mazi struggled with the weight of the responsibility he now carried. The drums were always there, just beneath the surface of his consciousness, their rhythm constant and unyielding. He couldn't ignore them, no matter how hard he tried. His duties in the village began to feel distant, unimportant. Even simple conversations with his friends and family seemed disconnected. His thoughts always drifted back to the drums, to the power they held, and the consequences of wielding that power. One evening, as Mazi sat alone near the forest's edge, Elder Nia approached him. She had noticed the change in him, the way he had withdrawn from the village, and her wise eyes were filled with concern. "You carry a heavy burden, Mazi," she said softly, sitting beside him, "but you do not have to carry it alone." Mazi looked at her, his face filled with doubt. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do, Elder Nia. The oracle said I'm bound to the drums, but I don't know what that means. I feel like I'm losing myself." Elder Nia was silent for a moment, then nodded. "The drums are powerful, yes, but they do not define you, Mazi. You still have a choice. The question is, what will you do with that power?" Mazi frowned, his thoughts a tangled mess. "What if I can't control it? What if the drums are a curse?" Elder Nia smiled gently. "Only you can answer that, Mazi. But remember this. Power, by itself, is neither good nor evil. It is how you choose to use it that defines its nature." Mazi nodded, though his heart was still heavy. He knew Elder Nia was right, but the fear of losing control, of becoming something dark, still lingered in his mind. That night, Mazi's sleep was restless. His dreams were filled with shadows, and the drum's beat echoed through the darkness. In his dream, Mazi stood alone in the village, but the people around him had changed. Their faces were blurred, and they moved like ghosts, whispering words he couldn't understand. The drums were louder now, pounding in his ears, their rhythm frantic and chaotic. Mazi felt a surge of power rise within him, but it wasn't the controlled, steady energy he had felt in the cave. This was wild, untamed, a force that threatened to consume him. Suddenly, the village around him began to crumble, the earth shaking beneath his feet. The dark forces from the drums twisted around him, pulling him deeper into the chaos. Mazi tried to scream, but no sound came from his mouth. He was drowning in the power, unable to control it. And then, through the chaos, a voice echoed in his mind. The oracle's voice. "There is a sacrifice you must make, Mazi. Only then will you be free." Mazi woke with a start, his heart racing, sweat drenching his body. The drum's beat still echoed faintly in his ears, but the meaning of the oracle's words haunted him. A sacrifice. What would he have to give up to break free from the power of the drums? The next morning, Mazi couldn't shake the dream from his mind. The oracle's words, "A sacrifice you must make," played over and over in his head. He knew that if he wanted to understand the power of the drums, he would have to face the truth, no matter how difficult it was. Later that day, Mazi found himself standing in front of the oracle's cave once more. He wasn't sure if he was ready for what he might discover, but he knew he couldn't run from it any longer. The oracle was waiting for him inside the cave, her eyes filled with the same wisdom and mystery as before. Mazi stood before her, his heart heavy with fear and uncertainty. "I need to know," Mazi said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What is the sacrifice? What must I give up to break free from the drums?" The oracle's gaze was steady, her voice calm. "The drums are tied to the deepest parts of your soul, Mazi. To be free of their power, you must give up something precious, something that defines who you are." Mazi's heart clenched. He knew what was coming, but he wasn't ready to hear it. "You must give up the hope of a family," the oracle said softly. "You will never marry, Mazi. You will never have children. That is the price for breaking free from the drum's power." The oracle's words echoed in Mazi's mind as he left the cave, the weight of the sacrifice pressing down on him. He had always imagined a future filled with love and family, a simple life in the village where he could find peace and happiness. But now, that future seemed impossible. The thought of never marrying, never starting a family, it felt like losing a part of himself. Mazi had always dreamed of finding someone to share his life with, of having children and passing down the traditions of his ancestors. But now, that dream had been taken from him, replaced by the cold reality of the drum's power. He felt like he was standing at a crossroads, one path leading toward the power of the drums, the other toward a life without the weight of that power. But no matter which path he chose, he would lose something precious. Mazi sat by the river, staring at the water as it rushed past. The sacrifice felt unbearable, but the thought of living under the drum's control for the rest of his life was even worse. He didn't want to be a prisoner to their power, to the dark forces that seemed to lurk behind them. But was he strong enough to give up the life he had always dreamed of? Mazi hadn't told Juma about the sacrifice. He didn't know how to explain it, didn't know how to put into words the heavy burden he now carried. But Juma could sense that something was wrong. He had noticed the change in Mazi, the way he had withdrawn even further into himself, and one afternoon, he confronted him. "Mazi," Juma said quietly as they sat by the baobab tree. "You're not telling me something. What happened with the oracle? What did she say?" Mazi stared at the ground, his heart heavy. "She told me what I have to give up," he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. Juma frowned. "What do you mean?" Mazi took a deep breath, his chest tight with emotion. "If I want to be free of the drums, I have to give up everything. I'll never marry Juma. I'll never have a family." Juma's eyes widened in shock. That's the sacrifice? But that's too much, Mazi. You can't." Mazi shook his head, his eyes filled with sadness. "I don't have a choice, Juma. If I want to be free, this is the price I have to pay." The days passed in a blur, and Mazi found himself growing more and more distant from the life he had once known. The thought of the sacrifice weighed heavily on him, and he spent long hours alone, trying to make sense of it all. Could he really give up the hope of a family? Could he live with the knowledge that he would always be alone, bound to the drum's power? Or was there another way, a way to balance the power of the drums with the life he had always dreamed of? One evening, as the sun set over the village, Mazi sat alone by the river, the drum's rhythm still pulsing in his mind. He had spent so much time fighting against the drums, trying to escape their power. But now, he wondered if there was another path, a path where he could accept the drums, embrace their power, and still live a meaningful life. The oracle had spoken of sacrifice, but Mazi knew that power was never simple. There was always a cost, but maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to bear that cost and still find peace. Mazi stood, his heart heavy, but his mind clear. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. the journey was far from over. Mazi's decision wasn't final. The oracle had shown him the cost of freedom, but Mazi knew that the true power of the drums was still something he had to understand. He couldn't make his choice until he knew what it meant to be bound to that power, and whether it was truly something he could live with. As the stars twinkled overhead, Mazi felt a sense of calm settle over him. The questions still lingered, but he no longer felt lost. There was still so much he didn't know. But he wasn't alone in this journey. Juma, Elder Nia, and even the oracle, they were all part of the path he was on. Mazi stood, the beat of the drums now a steady rhythm in his soul. He had a responsibility to his village, to himself, and to the power that now lived inside him. He couldn't escape the drums, but maybe, just maybe, he could learn to live with them. The sacrifice would always be there, looming in the distance. But for now, Mazi was ready to face whatever came next. He had to be. What do you think lies ahead for Mazi? Will he embrace the drum's power or fight for his freedom? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your ideas and theories in the comments below. Your insights might shape what's to come. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more exciting episodes of the Drums of Dunia. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a beat on Mazi's journey.